Last year, Bulgaria was named the Outsourcing Destination of 2015. At the beginning of this year, Lithuanian Vilnius and Kaunas received the Central and Eastern Europe Shared Services and Outsourcing Awards as the most dynamically developing city and the emerging city of the year, respectively. The Polish city of Kraków has been Europe's best outsourcing destination since 2014, according to Solons. State Street Bank, Barclays, Nasdaq, GSK, Accenture, Hewlett-Packard are only a few examples of companies who have located their outsourcing centers in Central and Eastern Europe. My name is Andrew Rogel, and this is Emerging Europe Live, the first episode in a series of engaging discussions about topics relevant to the CEE region, directly from London. Our today's special guest, the Bulgarian Minister of Economy, and experts from the National Outsourcing Association, Deloitte, Colliers International, and State Street Bank are going to discuss what makes CEE the outsourcing destination. Join us. Today my special guest is Mr. Božidar Laukarsky, Minister of Economy of Bulgaria. Minister, this is your first official visit to London. Is outsourcing one of the sectors that you would like to discuss while being here?
Един от основните моменти на моето посещение е свързан именно с среща на представителите от Британската асоциация, Outsourcing асоциация, и едно от нещата, всъщност основни неща в моята визита беше представянето на България като добра аутсорсинг дестинация, както показват и наградите за миналата година, може би най-добрата в Европейския съюз, и предимствата на България именно като такава.
So last year, Bulgaria was the outsourcing destination, according to the National Outsourcing Association here in the UK. What makes the country really an interesting outsourcing destination?
Това, което мога да кажа, първо да върна малко лентата назад и да кажа, че всъщност ние започнахме да развиваме този бизнес в България преди около 10 години. Съвсем в началото бяхме, но за последните 10 години успяхме да извървим пътя с много бързи темпове, за да стигнем до тази награда и до това признание. Това, което продължава да бъде предимство на България като аутсорсинг дестинация, е свързано както с бързия, скоростен и свободен интернет. Нещо, което все още, за съжаление, не е характерно за голяма част от страните в Европейския съюз. Така също и нивото на квалифицирана работна ръка, с която разполага България, ниските оперативни разходи, не само като сравнително с европейското заплащане на работната ръка, но и също така като разходи, свързани с наемане на офиси, наемане на подходяща работна ръка, която обслужва съответно аутсорсинга, също така свързана с разходите, свързани с социални осигуровки, не на последно място най-ниските данъци в Европейския съюз. Това са нещата, които продължават да бъдат предимство на България. Аз бих наблегнал и бих подчертал наличието на квалифицирана работна ръка, не на последно място. България и българите се славим с това, че свободно говорим различни видове, най-различни езици. Английски общо взето е доста често разпространен, но в България фирмите, които работят, извършват аутсорсинг услуги над 25 езика, което само по себе си е характерно и отговаря на един от въпросите.
So right now the biggest outsourcing destinations within Bulgaria are, I would say, Sofia and Plovdiv. How about other second-tier cities? Do you think that Varna could be another outsourcing center in Bulgaria?
Принципно, всички градове, в които има добро техническо образование и развити университети в България, биха могли да предложат аутсорсинг услуги на високо ниво. Това беше всъщност едно от нещата, които обсъждахме на срещите днес с Outsourcing асоциацията. И това ще бъде една от ключовите точки и темите, които ще бъдат обсъждани и на мероприятието, което ще се проведе в началото на октомври в България, на което България ще бъде домакин. Аз бих подчертал, освен градовете, за които вие казахте, София, Пловдив и Варна, бих добавил Бургас, който по мнение на известни, без да искам да правя реклама, известни аутсорсинг фирми е място, което в момента най-бързо се развива. Бих добавил Свищов, Велико Търново и Габрово, не на последно място, където има много силен технически университет, а също така и Благоевград, който вече се очертава като сериозен университетски център, който подготвя млади кадри. Така че България има още доста потенциал за развитие на аутсорсинга като нови центрове.
And when we look at the bigger picture, I would say the whole of Central and Eastern Europe, how would you say Bulgaria can compete with countries like the Visegrad Group, so Hungary, Poland, the Czech Republic, Slovakia, and also Serbia, perhaps, and the Baltic countries? What are the advantages of Bulgaria?
Откакто съм министър, това е една от обсъжданите теми на Европейски съвет и имам някаква база за сравнение. И това, което мога да кажа като разположение на България сред тези потенциални конкуренти за аутсорсинг, за които вие говорите, основното, което мога да изтъкна като предимство на България, именно ние имаме от всичко по-малко, така да го кажа. В сравнение с Вишеградската четворка бих казал, че имаме по-добри познания езикови и по-добро качество на интернет. А в сравнение с Балтийските републики, които имат също много високо качество на интернет връзка, мога да кажа, че имаме по-ниски оперативни разходи и по-голямо количество и обем на квалифицирана работна ръка. Така че това са нещата отново, както казахме в първия въпрос, които налагат България като аутсорсинг дестинация номер едно.
You gave me a number of reasons why Bulgaria is an attractive destination, but there's always room for improvement. So what are the challenges, in your opinion, ahead of the Bulgarian outsourcing sector?
Това беше също една от темите, които обсъждахме тук на срещи в Лондон и така получих доста сериозна информация от Българската аутсорсинг асоциация и от аутсорсинг фирми, които вече оперират в България. Този ваш въпрос е свързан именно с въпроса къде биха могли да бъдат новите центрове на аутсорсинг в България. И отговорът, който крие предизвикателствата е, че всъщност в някои от градовете, които изборих, има не до там развита инфраструктура и недостатъчно наличие на офисна база и на луксозен сграден фонд, нещо, което се изисква безспорно за... Това са, разбира се, битовизми, но този вид логистика е важен и е едно предизвикателство за развитието на аутсорсинга в България.
So next time we're meeting here in London will be in mid-October during the Global Expansion Summit. What will be your message to the participants of the summit?
Ще се върна малко назад във вашия въпрос. Ще кажа, че това, което ще бъде мое послание, ще бъде плод на разисквания и на мероприятието, което ще се проведе в София, съответно и след това в Лондон. Като една от идеите е да призовем тези, които вече са в България и които работят на пазара на аутсорсинга, да дадат своя пример и да кажат на своите колеги и конкуренти ползите на България. И моето послание ще бъде: елате и вие, другите вече успяха.
Thank you very much, and thank you for accepting the invitation to take part in the program. My special guest today was Mr. Božidar Lukarski, Bulgarian Minister of Economy. In the second part of the program, we will talk about the outsourcing sector in the entire region.
Growth in the business services sector has been skyrocketing over the last 15 years in Central and Eastern Europe. In the first quarter of 2015, there were more than 1,000 centres operating, employing 335,000 professionals. Between 2003 and 2014, an average of 70 new business service centres opened per annum. Between Q1 2013 and Q1 2014, the sector provided 40,000 new jobs. The structure of services is dynamically changing from back office through middle to front office functions. Nowadays, the BPO sector in CEE is set to grow even further because of a secured supply of well-educated graduate talent.
So my today's guests are Kerry Hallard, CEO of the National Outsourcing Association, Elias van Herwaarden, EMEA Service Leader for Global Location Services at Deloitte, Iglika Yordanova, Managing Director for Bulgaria, Colliers International, and finally, last but not least, Scott Newman, Senior Vice President, Managing Director, State Street Bank GmbH. Welcome, and thank you for accepting my invitation to today's panel. Let me start with Scott. I know that you recently opened a new facility in Gdansk in Poland. This is the second facility that you are operating in the country. What made you actually go for a new center?
Sure, yeah. We've been operating for just over 8 years in Poland with about 2,500 employees in Kraków. We've expanded rapidly and we have continued growth into Poland, which is great for us. And so last year we decided to start to think about what's next for us. Can we continue to grow in Kraków? Should we consider an alternative city in Poland or perhaps somewhere else in the Central and Eastern European region? So we went through an additional location study and quickly came back to Poland from a country level, but decided primarily for two reasons we would diversify away from Krakow. Number one, from a business continuity perspective, the work that we do is predominantly around producing investment fund prices on a daily basis. So we need to be able to recover in the event of a major emergency. The second reason is Kraków, as we all know, is a leading location in the Central and Eastern European region, but it is becoming more competitive, and securing talent and retaining talent has become more difficult. We still have a very, very strong pipeline of candidates, but for those two reasons we decided to diversify, and Gdansk scored very, very well in our analysis, and we opened our new office in Gdansk earlier this year and have almost 300 employees there now.
So when you're talking about competition, you're talking about people.
Yes.
That are available on the market.
Absolutely. Krakow, I think, has grown, on average 20% year on year for the last 5 to 8 years. A lot of international investors have seen the names of some of the brands go into Krakow. That's given them a comfort level, and they've immediately been attracted to Krakow. But not let's forget, look at the universities in Krakow and the surrounding area. More than 200,000 students, some of the best universities in the country. The quality of the talent pool is tremendous, and it's been a draw, and for us a success.
I think that in Central and Eastern Europe, the thing that people are always referring to is the people, basically. What are your experiences in how do you see the talents in Central and Eastern Europe, Kerry?
Obviously, there's an excellent talent pool in Central and Eastern Europe, but there is still a problem with the scalability and the ongoing emergence of the right level and volume of talent that's going to be required by the global outsourcing marketplace. So those skills are changing really dramatically at the moment as well, globally. So the digital agenda is changing the sort of skills that are actually required, and there's a requirement now for more of the higher value knowledge workers to emerge rather than the data processing, more basic skills that have been required of yesteryear. And that's a really big challenge for all of these countries, to produce the right level of graduates and then to actually train them to the right level of account management.
Do you see that the governments of those countries in the region are trying to improve the educational system to respond to the needs of the current investor or employer? Elias.
Well, actually, I remember when we first started looking at Stettin, which is on the border between Germany and Poland, there wasn't much. And our clients were wondering whether they would get the SAP skills, the language skills, and everything. And 7 years later, we went there again during one of the regular visits. And the university had opened up a SAP-specific course to feed into the BPO and the captive center industries. They had expanded the language skills because they figured out they were very interesting for Scandinavian Nordic companies. So indeed, there's a lot of Danish SAP skills at Polish rates coming into the market. In Stettin, other examples in Gdansk, and I'm sure Scott can speak to that as well. So I think at local level, at powiat level, at county, provincial level, things are happening. On a national level, I think the governments have difficulty keeping up the pace because this industry is changing so rapidly. In Poland alone, it's the second contributor in GDP, employing more than 170,000. We've got more than 30,000 people working in the sector in Romania. I'd like to come back to what Kerry said on the difference in talent. There's a whole new generation out there that grew up with BPO or working in shared services as a real profession. We don't have that in the West. So the attitude towards this kind of line of work is quite different. I would also think, and we travel the world looking for best locations for our clients. It's not only skills, it's the drive, it's the motivation. I would think that people in Central Europe, wherever I go, are tremendously motivated to work.
Where do you think that comes from? That motivation that is different than anywhere else?
I think we've got a person in our middle that is much better placed to answer that. I mean, she is from the region. Iglika, what do you think?
I think, for example, if we take Bulgaria as a case study on that, and this is a case where BPO industry has grown significantly over the past 10 years from 0 employed to 35,000 employed in this case. And it is the multi-language skills and the IT skills, but as Kerry said, not just that. I think it's millennials also coming into this profession, as the millennials, they also think it's quite normal to change profession every 2-3 years or have more than one job actually. And this we see happening across both Sofia and the secondary cities in Bulgaria. It is becoming a culture. It's a multicultural, multi-generational thing that we see in these offices. And much beyond the just purely technical language skills, it's becoming now, as a motivation, I think it's becoming also a special kind of culture which is combined with a good lifestyle provided in these major cities in Central and Eastern European countries.
I think people are very, very ambitious given the history of many countries in the region as well. They want to show internationally what they can do. And our experience has clearly been that the quality of the graduates joining us has been tremendous. The technical level of education has been fantastic. To answer your original question, I think there's more to do. It is changing in terms of the universities changing their syllabus, but it is still not commonplace that all of our intake would have done a practical assignment at a company or an internship before having joined. And so a lot of the time and investment is actually in teaching them the softer skills. We found in terms of increasing the complexity on the technical side, there's very little, if anything, that they can't do.
And Kerry actually mentioned one thing before, that if you look at the last couple of years, you can see that the sector has developed in the region. So at the very beginning, we were talking about something like call centers. I spoke to the mayor of Łódź a couple of weeks ago, and she said, we don't really have them anymore in Łódź. So how has that developed, and what do we have in the region right now?
If I take our example, we've had a huge shift in terms of the more routine processing activities are not in Poland. They've shifted to some of our Asian hubs. What we found in Poland is that we can do any level of complexity, whether it's hedge funds, whether it's performance and analytics, whether it is performance attribution, some real complex products in the financial services sector. And as the financial services sector changes itself, a lot of the new products and regulation that are coming into place are being launched directly out of our offices in Krakow and Gdansk. So we found that the ability to go up the complexity curve is absolutely fine. And so we expect that to continue. We would expect more client-facing roles to be put into our locations in Poland and more analytical tasks in the future.
How do you see that developing, Elias?
Well, I think that an interesting example today is actually Bucharest. Bucharest was the last bastion really for call centers, and today there are some that say it's next Warsaw, because indeed the companies, whether they are the Wipros, the Accentures or the IBMs of this world, they have created a learning culture, and indeed what people have in Central Europe, they want to learn, so they are moving up the value chain. It's an observation Scott plays, well, everybody's still going to Krakow, but I think that he will be first to say you cannot do everything in Krakow today anymore, because if it's simple transactional stuff, Krakow is not your town. You will go to a second tier, to a third tier location. And I think that basically as this industry globally is moving forward, some countries have carved out their own niche. I think higher value add financial products, Poland makes a lot of sense. If it is into tech and IT, I think Bulgaria is really creating a place for itself. The Baltics have a very sweet combination of smaller centers, IT, and many language skills. So I think that what we're seeing here is that the call centers that are still stigma in our industry, when you go into smaller locations, very often the young kids in university say, I don't want to work in a call center. We say, this is BPO, it's not a call center. But once they get over that hurdle, they understand that they're part of something that is really new. I think call centers for Central Europe, they will always exist, But I think many of the young people, they want a real job. And that's not in a call center.
So this actually leads me to another question. Are the cities that have been popular for the last couple of years, can the market be saturated, and can there be no more space for any new BPO centers?
I can certainly talk about Poland, and you take Krakow as the best example. I would say there's absolutely still space there, but I think it's a question of scale. If you're a large new investor and you're looking at creating a new location with 1,000, 2,000 roles, then I absolutely wouldn't go into Krakow because of how competitive it has become. I do think there are 3, 4, 5 other alternative cities, Gdansk being one of them, which offers good alternatives with very, very good universities, large number of students, and so I think that is changing. On the flip side, for investors looking for, let's say, smallish locations of a few hundred, I think Krakow can absolutely continue to support that.
What do you think, Kerry?
You see what's actually happening in the outsourcing industry at the moment. There is a complete change from the mega deals and a move towards a sort of service integrator model, which is bringing a whole host of best-of-breed service providers together. And that gives opportunity for smaller contracts to be fulfilled. So the requirement for going in and choosing a destination that can upscale from 1 to 10,000 quite quickly isn't really what we're seeing so much of these days. So it is easier to choose from a large variety of destinations. If we take Bulgaria as an example, now Bulgaria won Outsourcing Destination of the Year for all the great work it's been doing of late. We're already seeing that Sofia is getting fairly close to saturation, and we're moving on to Plovdiv. Plovdiv is also getting fairly close to saturation. So I know it is a focus of the Bulgarian government and regions at the moment to actually look at different cities and developing those. But they've got every chance to be successful because of this new model of looking at best of breed and smaller players coming on in and delivering in this different ecosystem.
So we have actually listed a number of different cities. We were talking about Bucharest, we were talking about Sofia, we were talking about Krakow, and so on and so on. But there are cities like, for example, Vilnius or Kaunas, also in Lithuania. They were both recently awarded as great destinations for the outsourcing sector. Can we say that there are certain cities which are now sort of emerging from the unknown? Kerry was saying that we have Sofia, we have Plovdiv in Bulgaria, and the government is looking for other cities. Can we actually think what will be the cities in certain countries that are going to develop as outsourcing destinations in the near future?
It's a difficult question to answer because you need to look at the ecosystem. In Poland we have an ecosystem with 2 big cities, Warsaw, Krakow, and then there's more than 5 cities that have populations of over 500,000 people, including many, many students. So what you see, and probably the case of Scott is one, they start in the bigger city, Krakow, the mother of all BPO in Central Europe, and then they, with the experience gained, they select a tier 2 city. Now, in Hungary, that would be very difficult because there's very little outside of the ecosystem to Budapest. There's Kés, Kecskemét, Szeged, Debrecen, but people struggle keeping the towns. In Prague, it works. You got Brno, you got Ostrava. Indeed, let's not dive into Romania. We've got Bulgaria here. Indeed, where you got Plovdiv, you got Varna. There it is possible, but there's a big difference yet. In Poland, the industry is so big, is so widespread that it's easier to go to the Lublins, the Rzeszów of this world, Katowice, which 5 years ago nobody would dare to mention. Today, you're absolutely not in the game if you're not talking about Katowice. So these things change very rapidly. I think we see Poland. Do we still have tier 2 locations that we don't know about? No, they're going into the Lublins, the Rzeszów of this world, the Opola of this world. For Bulgaria, I think indeed they are moving into tier 2 because there's still a lot of choice. So it really depends on which country, whether you have a good option to go wider or further than the capital city.
Yeah, if I just may add on the Bulgarian case, we do witness this spillover effect from Sofia and Plovdiv to secondary cities, and this is happening over the last 2 years. It's a matter of availability of talent, and there are a few good university cities that are actually feeding the market. The office supply is there. The educational reform has been started, so that, as you mentioned, we already try to prepare, and businesses there building campuses or linking business to educational systems so that the secondary cities are actually able to support with talent, aside from the real estate and infrastructure aspect of it.
You also talked at the beginning about the talent pool required, and one of the important things for us in our selection of Gdansk was, is it an attractive city that we can, let's say, import talent from other cities, both within Poland, but also from the region and Western Europe, because taking into account that gap between very, very high quality graduates and a limited talent pool of executives and experienced people in financial services with 10 or 15 years experience, we knew we would always be reliant on importing talent to a degree. And so we felt with the selection of a city such as Gdansk, which is a beautiful city, we would have, you know, limited challenges in importing people from other locations, and that's worked well. It's been important.
This is actually something that I wanted to refer to. We're talking about what investors are now looking for when it comes to a location. I think that there are things like the quality of life. We're talking about the supply of office space. We're talking about the infrastructure as well. What do you think right now? What do you hear from investors when it comes to why they choose certain locations?
I think the number one issue for our buy-side members today is risk. So they'll be looking at what the risk of any destination that they choose is. So that's the political stability piece as well as the growth piece is really, really important. So that's why you'll see there's been a huge shift from the Ukraine, obviously. Nobody's investing to go in there, and in fact the service providers that were playing in Ukraine have broadened their footprint to stabilise their risk. So risk is a key one for starters.
I think what we see a lot, we've got this checklist in quality of life. They never really check that box, and we continue to say, well, you need to have an attractive city to attract and retain talent. Scott's story. But the real foremost location driver is talent. And scalability of that talent. Now there's that eternal debate, do we go for the languages and do we teach them the skills, or do we go for the skills and teach them 200 words in English, French or whatever? That debate is still out there, but it is all about the availability of talent. And once they get into that mode, they start to understand, and I think that that's where Iglika could add on, that also the micro-location is very important. How do you get to work? What does the office look like? And there are big changes.
What does it offer as well?
Well, what's the offer?
Like after work, basically.
Well, the offer after work, but these people know that they'll work for 10 years really hard, and then they'll try to have a bit of a work-life balance. But it is also the micro-location, the quality of it, that we see taking more and more importance in the eventual selection of location. But talent, talent, talent are the three foremost drivers.
What about office supply? What are investors looking at right now when it comes to offices?
Offices are changing as much as talent and talent needs are changing. I completely agree that talent is the top reason for anybody to choose a location. Real estate comes as a function of that, and it comes second. But what is happening with the office space is that it's changing, it's new ways of working. It's much more now for the younger generations, not really work-life balance, but now they call it work-life blend. So you would expect that you have all of that at the same place within your working environment. So much more moving into activity-based workplace, co-working experience, community zones. So the whole thing in terms of real estate is changing, and the key word here is flexibility. So the companies would like to have the flexibility of recruiting more, expanding, contraction, and this is affecting the way real estate has to respond in terms of time, in terms of legal framework. So it is having a dramatic change also on the way real estate is now performing, and it's set to perform in the future.
But I've also noticed that, I'll let you add a comment, but I have noticed that some of the offices, like if you go to, if you remember your visit to a certain office, let's say 5 years ago, and you go to the same office now, you see a dramatic change in what the office looks like and what the facilities are. Is that sort of a reason is demand for this a reason why it changes? Like, I'm talking about the changes themselves.
It is definitely a demand coming from, basically from the BPO sector. We see the most. BPO sector is about 80% of the whole office market in Sofia, and it's now becoming a trend also for the secondary cities. We see it changing in terms of having multicultural, multi-generational team inside. So this is also related to go green tendency, to nomadism, to remote offices, to people being able to enjoy more the lifestyle part and the quality of life. So it does affect also the GOA per workplace, the cost per workplace. It is a visible trend that we see all over the marketplace.
Elias wanted to add a comment.
Well, I was just very intrigued by what she was saying, because I've also seen many of my clients, initially when they see the price of real estate, they say, oh my God, it's just as expensive as, say, in Copenhagen or whatever. And then initially they think, well, it's lower labor cost, it should be low real estate cost as well. Well, that doesn't work. And we've seen a number of decisions. Recently, we have a Danish company called Boticon. They were interested in effective real estate cost, to put it mildly. But they went into the premier development in the center of Warsaw, and they paid a regular market price for one reason, because indeed they will be conducting R&D-like operations. And to attract that talent, indeed, the office looks different today than it looked like 5 years ago. I absolutely endorse what you're saying.
It does give a competitive advantage and special edge when it comes to talent war in more saturated cities.
Kerry was talking about risk, which I wanted to refer to, and we were talking about Ukraine. And do you think there is room when it comes to the outsourcing sector, there is room in such countries like Belarus, for example, or even further south, like Bosnia, like Albania? Are these locations, do you think they will emerge, or they will be more popular in the sector soon, or?
I could address that from certainly from a banking and financial services sector, given that these location studies are something we refresh every 18 months to 2 years, and I would say at the moment not at all in the financial services space. We would predominantly look at only EU countries, and that's around things such as data privacy, which are very important to our clients. In the future, could that change as more countries accede to the EU? Yes, I think they could, but for us, not at the moment.
Deloitte the Italian Deloitte firm has a back office in Albania. Why? Tremendous workforce. They all speak Italian because they watch the Italian TV. So they are culturally affiliated, and you can just take a plane over very quickly. So my point is that some of these countries might have a very specific value proposition, but whether they will indeed join the Bulgarias, Romania, Poland's, Czechs of this world to really become an important player in the outsourcing industry, I don't know. And you should also not forget that they are like 10 years behind many of the other countries. And so what could they do? The really simple stuff? Well, the really simple stuff is being done by robots today. So I'm not sure whether they can still get into the game. Maybe the train has passed.
We're not hearing much from any of those countries, to be honest. We're hearing from Serbia, we're hearing from Macedonia, but we're not hearing from Albania, a little bit from Belarus. I mean, these countries do all have an opportunity to leapfrog. So that's the really exciting thing that does happen. It's not a case of playing catch-up. They often leapfrog straight on over with the digital agenda evolving the way that it's actually evolving. There are great opportunities for massive change to those countries that do actually get that piece right. But yeah, at the moment, we're not hearing from them.
We actually touched on this earlier, but can we say that certain countries or certain cities in the region, are they specialized in certain areas or certain subsectors, I would say? Like we're talking about the financial market, Scott was talking about Krakow and Gdansk, for instance, because of a number of reasons, including the EU membership. Do we have any other regions like that, or cities?
Well, I think that you could just follow the tags. Wrocław calls itself the Hyderabad of Central Europe, with a good reason. So IT, it's very strong, technology is very strong in Wrocław. They got the Polytechnica, which is the best polytechnical university of the region, so it thrives well on that. Poznan initially tried to do the same thing, but it got more in financial, transactional, non-banking operations. I think in Prague, for example, the battle seems to be lost by shared services because there are so many other verticals that offer better employment conditions, better career paths, regional headquarters. Budapest, by contrast, does not have that many headquarters. So that is a place where you see a lot of these so-called global business services landing, integrated shared services, and it does very well so. Cluj-Napoca indeed is focusing on IT and languages, so that combination today. So there are certain trends, but I wouldn't say, well, this city is only for IT, no. I mean, some have it that Gdansk is an IT city, Intel is there, others are there. So, and it starts spreading. Even Krakow, which had the Googles of this world, the Comarks of this world, they started setting up business in Warsaw. Again, driven there by the war for talent in Krakow.
So if you were to give some sort of advice to, well, I mentioned city mayors in the past, earlier today, if you were to advise them how they should sort of direct their policy, I would say, what would that be?
For me, based on our experience, I'd say we've had quite different experience in different cities that we've visited in Poland, some being exceptionally welcoming and very, very open, others not being particularly interested. One piece of advice that I always give is quality of data. We struggle to get accurate data from a lot of the city authorities on, the exact size of the talent pool, the existing size of the market, which we rely on as an investor to make decisions. So I think data quality needs to be addressed. I also think a lot of Western European and US companies are very, very interested in potential for state aid, obviously making a significant investment in the region. And again, an area where I think the investment authorities of particular cities and countries need to be a little bit more open and transparent in really what's available through state aid programs. Again, we've seen significant differences. The Gdansk authorities were extremely open, very transparent and very, very helpful in setting up and growing a business in Gdansk. I would say Krakow weren't at all.
I think if there's one thing I would say to them, and we interact with many of them, is take this serious. Take this more seriously. Because what we've seen, there will still be stuff going to India, the Philippines, and those countries. But we see the HCLs and the others of this world, they are setting up multiple centers near Central Europe or in Western Europe. Why? Because they need the languages and the culture. Look at the figures in all of these countries. Employment is up, counting in tens of percentages. 10, 20, 25. So this is a job creation engine. And indeed, like Scott also said, well, some they really understand. They force the universities to be more collaborative, learning programs, cooperation programs, and others to say, well, I want my shipyards back. And I'm only quoting here. Take it seriously. Develop the infrastructures, allow the builders to build, the associations to be in touch. Some examples, you're a member of Aspire in Krakow. Aspire did wonders for Krakow. Likewise, some of these countries have very powerful, very positive associations that can help. But some governments still want to get big car factories and just that.
Kerry?
No, I mean, I concur with what everyone's actually saying here. I think it's really important not to be too competitive for the development of the country overall. I see that happening quite a lot outside of the European region. So the reason why China, for example, hasn't actually had a major breakthrough is because every province in China compete against each other and push each other down. So there has to be an element of promoting the country in the first instance before you go into the cities and the regions. But yes, complete clarity on what incentives are available is really, really key.
Yeah, Iglika?
I would only add to that maybe on the educational reform side, which is I think also very important together with the regulatory framework and best talent cost framework, which is happening in CEE. I think also educational reform is something that we in Bulgaria are taking steps towards building a good reform there, making sure that we are competitive in the future. And I think one positive effect that we also start seeing is that actually the businesses see the synergy, and it's rather more of a synergetic environment for us building Bulgaria as a destination.
And another piece actually is the ongoing professional development. We've talked about talent. Talent is a really key issue. It's not just a case of getting the skills at university level, it's actually then the ongoing investment in developing them so that they can carry on sort of like doing the account management piece and the countries can actually grow with their customers and not be stopped at a certain level, and that's really important.
I think everybody has a role to play there. Obviously the business can take a leading role in getting into the universities and teaching the skills that modern day business services require. However, the universities have to be more receptive. Some are, some still have a long way to evolve.
All right, thank you very much for this discussion. My guests were Kerry Hallard, CEO of the National Outsourcing Association, Elias van Herwaarden, EMEA Service Leader for Global Location Strategies at Deloitte, Iglika Yordanova, Managing Director for Bulgaria, Colliers International, and again, finally, Scott Newman, Senior Vice President, Managing Director, State Street Bank GmbH. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.